Hello everybody, welcome back to Appalachia Cemetery Hunting. We're still in the Bakers Creek Cemetery. We have found such rich history laying here, it's unbelievable. So this is going to be part 3, and I'm sure there's going to be another part after this. But this goes along with our series of the Smoky Mountain cemeteries, and I hope you find some ancestors here. So let's get started. First we have William McClung, 1761 to 1837, and he served in the local militia in 1778 and 1779. Now, he served defending Virginia from threats posed by the British and their allies. In early 1781, he was a volunteer during that period that the British ultimately took Richmond, the Virginia capital. Now, these 3 tours were as a private in the Virginia militia, totaling about 6 months of service. In September of 1781, then Lieutenant McClung served for another 2 months, which culminated with a surrender of Lord Cornwallis at Yorktown, Virginia. Look at that, he's seen some history. Now we have Charles Keith McConnell, 1923 to 2013, and he was a World War II veteran of the U.S. Army and had been serving in the European theater. And he also participated in the D-Day invasion on Omaha Beach in June 6 of 1944. Another piece of history. Joseph McConnell, 1745 to 1823, and he served in the Cumberland County, Pennsylvania militia during the American Revolution. There's another guy. Now we have Absalom McNabb, 1779 to 1858, and he served as a private in the East Tennessee militia during the War of 1812. Now we have John McNabb, 1805 to 1874, Mary Lusk McNabb, 1780 to 1846, Mary E. McNabb, 1820 to 1884, Montgomery McTeer, 1811 to 1876, Silliman Buell McTeer, 1838 to 1907, and he served as a sergeant in the Company F of the 2nd Tennessee Cavalry in the Union Army during the Civil War. Now we have George Washington Montgomery, 1865 to 1919, and his wife, Martha Addie Lane Montgomery, 1868 to 1897. And this is a picture of them with their children, Roy Clarence and Isa O. Montgomery. It's pretty cool. Now we have Gillespie Montgomery, 1816 to 1882, along with his wife, Jane Montgomery, 1825 to 1902. Now, Margaret Weir Montgomery, I think this is an early settler, 1745 to 1809, and all 5 of her sons fought in the War of 1812. Ooh, I can imagine her sitting there fiddling with her hands every day and praying that they all come back safely. Now we have Thomas Montgomery, 1752 to 1827, and he was born in Ayrshire, I can't say it, Scotland. After the Irish Rebellion, the Montgomerys moved from that place in Scotland, hardboard, to Ulster, Providence in Ireland, where the people of that part of Ireland became known as the Scots-Irish. With the oppression of the Irish and the Scots people by Great Britain, Thomas, along with 4 brothers, made the move to America around 1768 or 69. Now, with the memory of the oppression from the Great Britain, he was in full sympathy with the American colonies. So, he enlisted and served in the Continental Army from Pennsylvania during the Revolutionary War. There's another history guy right there. Now we have Margaret Peggy Farr Morton, 1776 to 1852. Her husband, William Prescott Morgan, 1768 to 1852, and he died 1 month after her. He also served as a private in Nash's regiment of the South Carolina Volunteers during the War of 1812. Next is Mahala Murray, 1822 to 1891. Charles Wesley Kernan Norwood, 1794 to 1888, and he served as a private in the Mountain Infantry of East Tennessee Militia during the War of 1812. And here's a picture of his military stone. And this is a grave marker honoring his service in the war. Now we have James M. Norwood, 1820 to 1902, and James served as a private in Company E of the 42nd U.S. Colored Infantry during the Civil War. Now we have Melinda George Norwood, 1816 to 1863. Melinda Henderson Norwood, 1796 to 1848. Hoyle Sherman Orr, 1940 to 2006, and he served as a specialist 4th class with the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War. Now is Nancy Shanks Parsons, 1800 to 1858, and her husband, Robert S. Parsons, 1801 to 1869. Martha Amelon Pugh Pate, 1827 to 1898, and her husband, William Canterbury Pate, 1822 to 1865, and according to our source, he fought in the Civil War, but we don't know which side. Now we have Mary L. Pyatt Pearson, 1810 to 1866, and her husband Thomas Pearson, 1808 to 1866, and he died only 1 month after she died. Now we have Henry H. Pride, 1844 to 1832, and he was a former slave of Dr. Samuel Pride, who was the first mayor of Maryville, Tennessee in 1850. So I know a lot of the slave owners, the slaves would take the last names of their owners. I know it's a sad thing, but still it's a part of history. But Henry served as a private in the Company B of the 1st U.S. Colored Troops Heavy Artillery Regiment of the Union Army during the Civil War. So a lot of the slaves were like family to these people too, so you got to take that in consideration. Now here's a photo of him sitting on the front porch sometime in the 1920s. Tell me that ain't cool. Now we have his wife, Minerva, or they called her Nervy, George Pride, 1836 to 1911. Lucretia Valentine Trice Pug, 1803 to 1869. And she's the second wife of William Marcus Pug, and he was born in 1773, passed away in 1850, and he fought in the War of 1812. Now we have Martha Montgomery McTeer Ray, 1818 to 1888, and her husband, Massenberg Pearson Ray, 1826 to 1888, and he passed away only 8 months after she did. You know, I know that grief does a lot of things, and it could possibly be pure grief, but, you know, to me back then it kind of maybe sounded like they may have contracted something, you know, who knows. Now we have David Wayne Robbins, 1957 to 2021. There's no picture of his grave, but we do know he retired from the U.S. Air Force after 20 years of service. And next to him is his brother Joseph Lee Robbins, 1960 to 2020, and he was a veteran of the U.S. Navy. Thank you guys for your service. Also, we have their father, Wayne Carley Robbins, 1935 to 2020. And he was a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps. Service to our country ran in his family. That's for sure. Now we have James Don Roddy, 1917 to 1975. He was a veteran of the U.S. Army. William M. Roddy, 1833 to 1884. And according to a post on Find a Grave, he fought in the Civil War, but we don't know which side he fought for either. Next is Julia Bird Oaks Rorix, 1897 to 1930. And there's actually a newspaper article about a car wreck that she and her husband were in. Now I'm going to read this real quick. It says, woman buried in death, burned to death in a car wreck. Mr. and Mrs. Rorix burned beneath automobile. This was in Greenville, February the 21st. Mrs. A.B. Rorix of Johnson City was fatally burned. Her husband is in Tacoma Hospital with serious injuries. Long's filling station is in ruins, and 2 automobiles are wrecked as a result of a peculiar crash late Thursday on Andrew Johnson Highway near here. Mr. and Mrs. Rorix had been to Knoxville. They were driving back to Johnson City, where Rorix is manager of Tennessee Home Supply Company. Another car came from a crossroad near Long's filling station. It struck the Rorix car, which ran into the gasoline pump, knocking it down and then crashing into the filling station. The filling station's roof fell in on the Rorix car and all caught fire. Mr. and Mrs. Rorix were pinned under the overturned blazing car. Persons nearby dragged them out of the wreckage. They were brought to the hospital where Mrs. Rorix died. Some of these newspaper articles are hard for me to read, so sorry if I messed up. But that's a sad story. Now we have another first settler, John Ryder, 1756 to 1834, and John served as a private in both the 3rd and 4th Virginia regiments during the American Revolution. Next is Emma Wayville Sanderson, 1817 to 1858. She was born in Gosport, Borough, Hampshire, England. Hope I got that right. Now is Adam C. Shanks, 1805 to 1875, and his wife Sarah Shanks, 1808 to 1878. Now is Jack D. Sharp, 1933 to 2018, and he served in the U.S. Navy during the Korean War. Joseph Pershing Sharp, 1922 to 2013, and Joseph served as a seaman first class in the U.S. Navy during World War II. Now is Fred Spradling, 1919 to 1981, and he fought in World War II as a sergeant in the U.S. Army. Margaret Jane Hammondtree Stone, 1828 to 1912. Alan Strain, 1786 to 1858. Elizabeth J. Cochran Stewart, 1837 to 1907, and her husband, John Alexander Stewart, 1835 to 1919. And somebody had posted on Find a Grave that John was a veteran of the Civil War. Now we have A.H. Tarwater, 1847 to 1913. Now there's no photo of his grave. He supposedly served in the Union Army in the 3rd Tennessee Regiment or in the 3rd Tennessee Home Guard. We're just not sure. Now we have Andrew Hugh A.H. Taylor, 1847 to 1913, and he served in Company E of the 3rd Tennessee Mounted Infantry in the Union Army during the Civil War. Eleanor Ewing Taylor, 1810 to 1849. John C. Taylor, 1813 to 1890. Nancy Barton Thompson, 1808 to 1876. Robert Thompson, 1776 to 1854. Roger Robert Thompson, 1801 to 1876, and you'll notice that his headstone is broken in half. Then we have Samuel Thompson, 1754 to 1839. There's no photo of his grave. However, we do know that he was a veteran of the Revolutionary War. Then we have another Samuel Thompson, 1752 to 1839, and we do know that he was born in Ireland and he fought in the Virginia line during the American Revolution. And he was with the East Tennessee militia during the War of 1812. He saw a lot of fighting. Now is Floyd True, 1916 to 1995, and he fought in World War II as a staff sergeant in the U.S. Army. Now this is going to finish our part 3. We don't want to make these videos too long that you just get plumb bored. So this is a very historic cemetery. So let's take our time. Let's find our ancestors. Let's give these people, these men that fought, some due diligence here. This is amazing how many, like I said, war veterans we have here and first settlers. So we want to thank you for watching once again, and we'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe and hit that like button and share. Help get our videos out there for a lot of people. And we'll see you for part 4 next week, Lord's willing. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.